Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen. And just when you thought there couldn't be more, bring on number 4. Ladies and gentlemen, very special guest with our conversation series with Mr. Vince Russo. Vince, welcome to the show.
I am happy to be back. I have really enjoyed these conversations with you because they're different. They're well thought out. You've got great insights and opinions. So let's continue on.
I appreciate it, Vince. Let's dig deep. Let's start off. We mentioned WrestleMania 10. That was your first WrestleMania with the company. We talked about that on a previous episode, touched on it a little bit, but let's kind of go a little more in depth. WrestleMania 10 weekend. This is a big deal. It's Madison Square Garden. You're a New Yorker, of course. What was it like to be at MSG for the first time with the World Wrestling Federation and be at WrestleMania for the very first time?
God, bro, I'll tell you, man, the one thing that always stands out to me, and it's hysterical. I don't know if that was the first fan fest or not, but I do. Yeah. Oh, it was the first one.
Very first.
Okay. I remember this as clear as yesterday. What year is this?
1994.
So 94, I'm 33 years old. Okay. I'm 60. I'm going to be 65 on Saturday. So it was a long time ago. So I'll never forget. I'm working the WWE Fan Fest because of the magazine. I could even tell you the two people we had signing at our booth was Alundra Blaze and Adam Bomb. I remember they were signing at the booth. And I'll never forget. I'm working, the Fan Fest, and Linda McMahon comes up. And I'm having a conversation with Linda McMahon. And like my very first WrestleMania, just been with the company for a couple of weeks, Linda McMahon tells me to lose the gum. Yeah. Bro, is that not insane how I remember that above everything else? Here's the second thing I really remember, bro. I really remember this. I remember Brett and Owen's match. And I remember watching that match and enjoying the hell out of it. And I remember after the match going to Owen and telling him that and how much it genuinely meant to him. Because obviously, let's face it, man, let's look at the stakes. He's in there with Brett for the first time, Madison Square Garden at WrestleMania. Bro, a ton of pressure. And and that's why, like, I wanted to let him know, bro, that was incredible. And I just, the look on his face and the tone of his voice, he was so appreciative of me telling him that. And I'll never forget that. And I'm not saying that because, Owens tragically passed and whatnot. I remember that memory more than anything. From that day. Couple other things I remember, which are pretty funny, but freaking Burt Reynolds was having the time of his life. And keep this in mind, guys. You don't understand, but at that point, Burt Reynolds is a megastar. I guarantee you a lot of people listening to the show have no idea who Burt Reynolds is. Burt Reynolds was the it guy. I mean, am I right?
Yeah,
Burt
absolutely.
Reynolds was the guy. A mega star. He was so happy to be there talking to the boys. Like, you would have thought he was a fan, right? In the meantime, 90210 was just taken off and Jenny Garth was there. Yeah. She would not leave her dressing room, didn't want to be there. The only time we saw her is when her people escorted her out to wave or do whatever she did and escorted her back. She wanted to have absolutely nothing to do with the show, wrestling, any wrestlers, and freaking Burt Reynolds was like a kid in a candy store. You know, it's funny because the real men used to love that. I remember Chuck Norris When Chuck Norris was there, the real guys used to love being around the wrestlers. Like, I wasn't there when Stallone was there, and I wasn't there when Arnold was there, but like, I can almost guarantee you it was the same thing. That the real men's men, they loved wrestling, they respected wrestling, they loved talking to the guys, and that was always pretty cool to see.
Any memories of or interactions with Rhonda Shear or Little Richard?
Not much. I remember Little Richard rehearsing. What did he sing? America the Beautiful. What did he sing at the top of that show? Is that what he sang?
Yep.
This I do remember. I remember him rehearsing it during the day, and Vince was in the ring, like, in awe. What Vince loved, like, the Little Richards, the Aretha Franklins. Like, again, man, we're dating ourselves. Like, I'm sure if somebody's saying who's Little Richard, I'm sure. Yeah. When Vince was around that type of celebrity, Vince marked out. Vince and I remember, I think Little Richard, I think they played like a little rock and roll stuff, just fooling around. And I literally remember Vince in the ring dancing. And like, everybody can remember, I can remember now like it was yesterday, Vince's introduction of Aretha Franklin. Bro, that was a huge deal to Vince. I mean, when stars of that status, Vince really marked out for.
And the Fan Festival, being the first there in 1994, that was kind of a rare opportunity for a fan to meet Adam Bomb. He was a heel at the time.
Yeah.
And you didn't often have heels signing autographs. How were those interactions with the fans, him being a heel?
That's a great question, man. That's a great question. I can remember him being in character. And when I say being in character, not cutting a promo on fans, but saying very few words. And it's so funny, man, because you talk about then and you talk about now, and literally with him not saying anything and just signing and stuff, you could almost see the fear and the hesitation in the fans approaching him. That's just how it was. And of course, Adam Bomb was not the kind of guy that was going to start cutting a promo on people, but it wasn't how you doing, shake your hand, but what's your name? It wasn't that. I remember him sitting there signing and saying nothing.
And obviously, they'd go on to become very successful, the Fan Fest, with Axxess, and now I think it's known as World. But at that time, being the first, what was the crowd like? Was it hundreds? Was it thousands? How many people?
There was a lot of people. And here's the thing, too, that's interesting. Being that it was the first, it was kind of experimental. Like they were trying things, not knowing what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. So it was really interesting, man. And what are we going into, 42 WrestleMania?
I believe so, yeah.
I mean, God, when you look back at 32 years and where that's come, but that was the real testing ground for that. It really was.
Yeah. And a member of the marketing team, he might have been the marketing manager at the time for World Wrestling Federation, was seen there in the aisleway throughout almost the entire pay-per-view for WrestleMania 10. Any memories of working with Rex Lardner?
God, I man, when you bring up these names of the Bob Collins and the Ed Cohen's, I'll put all those people over to the moon. I don't remember too much about Rex. I don't know if he was there long after I was there, but that name to me, there really doesn't ring a bell, and there really aren't any memories. So I don't know if I remember. I'll throw a name at you because I know you know these names. I remember freaking in 1991, Steve Planamenta.
Absolutely, yes.
I remember interacting with Steve Planamenta, who was always very good and very nice to me. The name Rex Lardner, I know the name, but I never had too many interactions with him.
Gotcha. And moving on to 1997, Monday Night Raw would obviously debut the Titantron. It was a new concept for the WWF. Obviously, they would normally come out of a very small entranceway. Why don't you tell us about that process? What the thought process was going into it, if anything, ahead of time, and the birth of the Titantron.
Yeah, I just remember, man, it just started becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And obviously with the success comes more money. So we're going to add new things. We're going to try new things. And again, that was just, listen, give credit where credit it's due. That's the WWE being a little ahead of its time. I mean, nobody obviously was doing that in wrestling. And I'm going to go back, and I don't care what anybody says about him. I'm sure that came directly from Kevin Dunn. And I always put Kevin over, and I always put over the television production and the television facility. Those guys work their asses off. And I would be shocked if that wasn't a Kevin Dunn idea.
And any memories from the director, Kerwin Silfies?
Kerwin was another great dude. Me and Kerwin still have this in common. We're both huge San Francisco Giant fans. So we have that in common. We both have the same hookup from the WWE that we still use to this day to go to Giant games. And the one thing I'll always remember about Kerwin was, him having a heart attack in the studio. That was rough. I mean, because that came out of nowhere and nobody expected it. And Kerwin was a laid back dude. I mean, very, very, very laid back. And then all of a sudden in the studio, the guy has a heart attack and we're all like scared to death. But man, it can kind of, it's just, people don't understand the stresses and the pressure of that job, man, especially live television. There's so much stress that comes with that job. That's why when you find a Kevin and you find a Kerwin, you just can't replace guys like that, man. What they do is so important. And Kevin and Kerwin together, man, were just the absolute best.
The ultimate combo.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So when it comes to Stone Cold Steve Austin, let's talk about the entrances, the beer trucks, the Zambonis, the cement trucks. He was involved in so many monumental TV moments with the vehicles specifically. Was there ever any idea that just didn't come to fruition? Maybe it was something else that you were going to do with him and for an entrance, and it just, for whatever reason, it never shaped up fully.
No, I can remember having to talk him into the beer truck. Okay, I remember that day where he came into the building and I said, Steve, here's what we're doing tonight. And I'll never forget this. He looked at me and he says, why can't I just drive my truck into the arena? And I said, Steve, it's a beer truck. Like anybody can drive a truck into the arena. There's only one guy that can drive. And it's kind of like when I said that, the light kind of went off. And of course, one of the most monumental, bro. But here's the thing, man, that people don't understand. Bro, we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people that want to discredit, Vince Russo. And here's what you'll always hear. Yes, Vince Russo was successful because of the roster. Look at who he had on the roster. Here's what they don't understand. Because there was such great and unbelievable talent on the roster, that made my job 10 times harder. Because you could take anybody. You could take The Rock. You could take Austin. You could take Mick Taker. My job as the writer is I got to go from here to here to here to here. You can never go as a writer. You don't want to go from here to here to here. So now as a writer, you had to be up to their level. And to take an Austin to the next level, and a Mick and a Taker and a DX and a Rock, that is hard because they are great. And if you don't give them that material, you wind up starting to diminish that greatness. So the better your roster is, the more difficult it is for a writer.
Yeah. And your second WrestleMania with the company was WrestleMania 11, obviously. Hartford, Connecticut, Hartford Civic Center. How was that celebrity crew in comparison to WrestleMania 10? You had Nicholas Turturro, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Pamela Anderson, Jenny McCarthy. Of course, you had Lawrence Taylor and his all-pro team. You had Salt and Pepper. Any memories from any of those celebrities?
Yes, there is. Bro, I swear to God, I remember the weird things and some things. Like, here's what I remember about that. I remember Jonathan Taylor Thomas playing freaking chess with Bob Backlund. Yes. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
I remember that. I do remember this, bro. This is a God honest truth. I don't know how many years into Baywatch we were. I don't know how many. I had no idea who Pamela Anderson was. I had no idea who she was, but I wound up interviewing Pamela Anderson in a room alone. It was like me and Pamela Anderson. I had no idea Baywatch, who she was. I had no idea of that. I remember with LT, it was pretty cool because there was like a big I think it was at a bar restaurant or something. So I remember meeting him there. I was a Giant fan, actually, obviously from New York. So that was a pretty big deal. It's funny with the celebrities because they were either into it or they weren't. And like I said, if it was like a guy's guy, they were always into it. They were always in awe of the wrestlers. But I do remember those few things about the celebrities for that WrestleMania. I wouldn't have even remembered Jenny McCarthy was a part of that, though.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, now any memories of the WrestleMania 11 build-up? It was the public workout in Times Square, which was very unique.
Yeah, WrestleMania 11 to me was just very lackluster. It was. Obviously the whole bill was Bam Bam and LT. I mean, that was the whole thing. But I do believe, was Kevin Nash in the main event?
Yeah, that was Diesel and Shawn, I believe.
Was it? Okay, yeah. For some reason, I remember New Haven because I remember, like, I didn't know it, but the New Haven Coliseum was in a mall. It was actually in a mall. I did not know that. Was it New Haven or Hartford? Hartford.
It was in Hartford Civic Center.
It was in Hartford, where the arena is actually in a mall. So you could leave the show and go shopping. I remember that. But that, I don't know, bro. Maybe because WrestleMania 10 was so monumental.
Yeah.
No matter what you did, 11 was going to kind of be a letdown. And I really think WrestleMania 11 was a little bit.
And do you remember specifically, going back to WrestleMania 10, what went over time limit wise? Because they scrapped the 10-man tag, which was kind of heavily advertised. And then the Earthquake Atom Bomb match was maybe 8 seconds.
Yeah. That's a great question because I wasn't involved at that level, obviously, at that time.
Yeah.
So I have no idea. I do remember this too, though, and you didn't bring this name up, for WrestleMania 11. I believe Salt and Pepper. Did they sing in LT or something?
Yeah, they performed there.
I remember Salt and Pepper performed. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely a popular choice at that time. They were pretty over. So, most challenging. What would you say has been the most challenging part of being a part of the wrestling industry for you over the years?
Oh my God. For me, because of the type of individual I am, the political bullshit, man. I just finished the show before I came on here. I finished my show with Stevie Richards and Ben Hameen, Master Shoot Theater. And Ben played a couple of clips from the boardroom in the new series of Unreal. When I get this from people all the time, and bro, oh, Vince, you're bitter and you're jealous because they don't call you and give you a job. Bro, I swear to you, when I watch these clips, if they hired me tomorrow I would show up for breakfast. I would be gone before we even got to lunch. There's no question in my mind. I look at the way they're doing business now, and the politics that I see is everything I hated about the wrestling business. It's the reason why, listen, man, when I got in it, I was like you. I was such a huge fan. I was happy to be there. It was awesome. But by the time, so this is like 94, 95, okay? By the time I go to WCW in 1999, so we're talking 4 years later, now it's a job. That's all it is. There's no love. There's no enjoyment. I know what I got to do. I'm always going to give my best effort. You're always going to get 100% out of me. But in those first 5 years, the fun was taken out of it. And I'll be honest with you, from that point, from 1999 to 2026, I've handled professional wrestling as a job. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, watch Unreal, because you could see it. I just saw a clip, bro, that I could not believe my eyes. They're in a boardroom doing creative. Now, I tell you, I think we spoke about this before. Bro, when I was there, the creative was me and Ed Ferrara going to Vince's house. That's the creative, guys. Vince wearing sweats, not combing his hair. We called out for lunch. That was creative. We're now in a boardroom. Everybody's wearing shirt and ties. There's whiteboards, and there's 13 people in that boardroom. I never in a million years could I work in that environment. But here was the really sad thing, and you'll see it on the show. Road Dogg Brian James, who has been with the company probably, definitely over 30 years. Over 30 years he's been with that company. There is a scene where he disagrees with Hunter. And he's afraid to say it. And he's afraid to say how he really feels and what he really sees. And anybody who sees the show will see that. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know this dude for over 30 years. This guy is your friend, and you're afraid to say how you really feel. Bro, that's got to be the worst feeling in the world. And that's why when people say to me, you're bitter because you're not there. Bro, never in a million years would I trade in what I'm doing now to be in that environment. Bro, I swear to you, if I got a call tomorrow and they said, Vince, we want your services for 1 year and we're going to give you $1 million. It would literally take me 1 second to say thank you, but no thanks.
Right.
I swear to you, what that was and what it is, I could never survive in that environment ever.
I guess on the flip side of that, what was the most rewarding so far in your career?
Bro, I swear the most rewarding thing for me when I walk away, bro, it was never the ratings. It was never Vince putting me in that spot. It was never overcoming, Nitro 83 weeks and all that shit. I swear to God, man, the one thing I am the most proud of, because I literally got sued over it and never had any legal problems my entire life, never got sued, never sued anybody, nothing like that did I ever experience. And I wound up getting sued and going through depositions and all that bullshit because I made the decision to put the WCW world title on Booker T. Period. End of story. It would have never happened if I wasn't there, because Booker T was not a politician. There were so many politicians at WCW. Booker T was never going to be able to break through that because that just wasn't in him. Booker and Stevie used to show up to work. Stevie Ray, we want to work. We're here to work. What do you want us to do? And they knew how good Booker was. They would have never, ever, ever allowed Booker to get to that top. And Booker would have never played the game. That just wasn't in him. And for me to know that, to know, number one, there's a good chance I could lose my job over this. Number two, I'm going to create enemies over this. Honestly, I never thought it would turn into a lawsuit, but it did. And I don't have problems with any of that. I got to do the right thing for somebody that really, really deserved it. And I don't think that could have happened if I didn't make that happen. And I because of who Booker is, I am more proud of that than anything else that ever happened in my career.
So one of the strangest celebrities that have ever been brought into WrestleMania, in my opinion, WrestleMania 10, you were there, Cy Sperling, the president of the Hair Club for Men.
That was awesome.
Well, how did that come about?
First of all, he was red hot at the time, man. There were Cy Sperling commercials everywhere. And again, not being in the inner circle at that point, I'm sure a lot of it had to do with being a rib on Howard Finkel. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, because Howard wound up wearing the toupee.
Right.
And, so I think, seriously, Cy Sperling was super over at the time. And I think it was probably a good situation to rib Howard Finkel, and that's probably why they did it.
And while Howard was getting ready for that segment, they would have Bill Dunn ring announce a couple of the matches, including the opening match with Brett and Owen. Any memories of ring announcer Bill Dunn, who was also in the merchandise department?
Yeah, I do remember Bill. I do remember him, but there weren't too many interactions with me and him, but I do remember him well.
So when it comes to Glenn Jacobs, fake Diesel, 1997, imposter Diesel, however you want to refer to him, that transition into the Kane character. When you look at him from a writer standpoint as fake Diesel, how are we going to get him to Kane? Do you think there's potential there still, because he already did the Isaac Yankem? He's fake Diesel now. Do you still see it? All right, this guy's still going to be a megastar, or did it kind of just come about unexpectedly?
I got to tell you this, and I was already kind of in the seat at the time, but Taker and Pritchard were pretty good friends, very, very, very close friends. And Bruce Pritchard had kind of developed in his mind this Kane character, and he was going to be Taker's brother. So I got, that did not come from me. I got to give credit where credit was due. That came from Bruce, but I wrote for that. So like the Kane character was not my idea. Him being Taker's brother was not my idea. But once that character became a reality, I wrote for that character from day one. Obviously, because he was under the mask, what he did in the past was not going to matter. Now if he was never under a mask, maybe. I swear, man, people in wrestling, I don't know if it's that they think people are going to forget or they really want people to really forget. I don't forget shit like that. To this day, you could push Gunther as hard as you want to push him. The dude lost to freaking Sami Zayn, bro. The minute you lose to Sami Zayn, I'm done with you. If you can't beat this guy, bro, I'm gonna believe you could beat Brock Lesnar. So I don't know if they actually believe people are going to forget or want to believe people are going to forget. So yes, it would have been very difficult with the Isaac Yankem and the fake Diesel, but the fact that he was under the mask, nobody knew who that was, and that's why it worked.
Obviously, previous episode, you kind of spoke about your love for George the Animal Steel, Jim Myers. How did it come about that he kind of got back into the TV spotlight as a part of the Oddities for a short period of time there?
Because I was a mark for him, that's why. Man, it's so great because characters like that just never get old, man. Never get old. He could always be George the Animal Steel. He's always going to get the pop as long as the tongue is green, and he's going to eat a turnbuckle. It's timeless, man. It would be over today. It literally would be over today. So to take that character and plug him in anywhere, it's always going to work. And that's why, I always preach, and nobody wants to listen. Man, it's all about character. It's all about character. Anybody can be a wrestler. Anybody can learn the moves. Anybody can train. There can only be one George the Animal Steele. And I mean, that guy, did that into his 50s, into his 60s, still getting paid. And it was just a timeless character, man.
And when you approached him, did he seem interested right away to do another TV role like that?
Oh, absolutely. And anytime you have those agents, like I can remember, writing Patterson and Briscoe into TV. Bro, the second you put them back in that ring, they become children. I swear to God, because that's really who they are. And, the reality of it is they get older and they can't work anymore. So now we've got to be agents or whatever it is. But the second you put them back in the ring, they're kids. And it's great to see. It's really great to see. You talk about fond memories, doing that stuff with Jerry Briscoe and Pat Patterson, knowing how much they loved it. Knowing how much they loved and enjoyed it. And when you go back and watch some of that shit and the way they're hamming things up, there are so many instances where Vince is in the ring and Pat's on the stage and we're on live TV and Pat's doing everything he can to pop Vince. And you could tell by the look on Vince's face, he is doing everything to hold it in. Bro, those were the absolute best times that nobody even knows about. I mean, I remember one time where, we turned Patterson and Briscoe babyface and Vince is in the ring and freaking Pat turned around and shook his ass at Vince. And the look on Vince's face where you knew stuff like that was the most fun. Absolutely.
Now, speaking of agents, any memories of Rene Goulet?
Yeah, again, never had too many conversations with Rene. I was there when he was an agent, when Tony was an agent. Bro, I was there when Chief Jay Strongbow was an agent. Bro, it's funny because, and I think about it now and it's really weird. I never had that much conversation with the refs. Okay, never spent a lot of time with the refs, really never spent a lot of time with the agents. And that's basically because I would do my part and then hand it off to them. Yeah. So I would do my part, then I would hand it off to the agent, then the agent would get the referee involved. So it's weird, guys like, Timmy White and, all those dudes, we were friendly and stuff, but I never really had a relationship with that part of it because 99% of the time I was working with the talent on, what was written in the show. Once we got to the match, now it's in the hands of the agent and the referees. And that's why there was never really that much interaction with them.
And obviously you were a part of some of the photo shoots for WWF Magazine as Vic Venom or, as time would go on, different things. But any memories of the photo shoots or Tom Buchanan, the photographer?
I just brought up Tom. I just brought up Tom's name in an interview just literally a couple of days ago. Bro, those are the unsung heroes, that never get mentioned. I'll tell you why I brought it up, because Bruce Pritchard took a shot at Jim Johnson and it really pissed me off. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Jim Johnson hasn't been with that company in years. Jim Johnson is getting older, as I am. Why in God's name would you take something away from a guy like that? Because I will tell you right now, I wrote the Attitude Era. Not Vince McMahon, not Bruce Pritchard. I wrote it. I wrote it along with Ed, okay? Jim Johnson was a huge part in the success of that. without a shadow of it. Bro, I'm going to say, I don't know if there would have been an Attitude Era without his soundtrack. Without a shadow of a doubt. Bro, I swear to God, when I watch wrestling today, there could be somebody that's been on the roster for 5 years. They hit the music. I don't know who it is. I swear to God, I don't know who it is. Jim Johnson, you hit the first note. We know who everybody is. Exactly. Why would you want to take anything away from that guy? And it was, Buchanan was another one of those guys. Bro, there was a time when there was only one photographer. And there were a couple of freelancers, but it was Tom Buchanan. And Tom was at every single thing, shooting everything. Like, that was Tom's life. And, obviously WWE Magazine, Tom's playing a huge role. But these are the people that never get brought up in the success of the company, man. You got to look at those magazines. You got to look at those covers. You got to look at the great shots that were taken. Somebody's doing that. And yeah, man, kudos to Tom Buchanan, man.
Yeah, I think instead of making derogatory comments about Jim Johnston, I think we should be instead talking about what year are we putting him in the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely. Oh my God. I've been saying that forever. Are you kidding me? Same thing. I always say the same thing about Steve Lombardi. Are we really putting people in the Hall of Fame based on one-loss records? You know how many freaking years Steve Lombardi put into the WWE? You know how many freaking years? And that guy isn't in the Hall of Fame because the Brooklyn Brawler didn't win a lot of matches?
Right.
It's some of the people. That's why I don't pay any attention to it. Like, it's such a joke. If you want the fans voting on it, that's one thing. If you want to give it up to the fans, these are the people on the ballot. I'm cool with that. But when you got a group of people deciding who's in and who's out, bullshit. Because if one person had one bad experience with Steve Lombardi, he's not getting in the WWE Hall of Fame. And Jim Johnson told me himself. I interviewed Jim several years ago. He told me himself, Triple H wanted his guy in that spot. That's why they fired Jim Johnson. Those words came from his mouth. So, if Triple H is responsible for Jim Johnson losing his job, and it's going to come down to Triple H to put Jim Johnson in the Hall of Fame, well, maybe that's why it hasn't happened.
Yeah. How important was the Super Bowl commercial for the WWF?
Oh, huge.
To the continued success?
Absolutely huge. Unheard of at the time for a wrestling company to have a commercial. Absolutely huge. It was so important to the company. And again, Kevin Dunn and his crew, the way they put that thing together, that was huge. That was absolutely monumental. That, and then we did the halftime heat with Mick Foley and Rock. Stuff like that was huge. Think about that, man. What has the WWE done outside of the box in literally the last 20 years? Those are things. There are times when you do things that clearly bring you to the next level. And those two things literally immediately brought us to the next level.
So working with Dixie Carter, you arrive, TNA Wrestling. Kind of tell us what that experience was like there for you. Obviously, you would go on to leave, but initially.
Well, initially it was great because I went there to work for my friend Jeff Jarrett, and I'll never forget. I had a consulting job with the WWE at the time, and TNA had just started. And Jeff Jarrett basically said to me, Vince, I need you to write our TV. So while I was consulting, I went to TNA's second show. I told Stephanie I was going. I said, I don't want you reading this in the dirt sheets. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to the show because I was consulting for them. And I said, I'm going to see what opportunities there are. I went to the show. Jeff says, I need you to write the TV. I told Stephanie, thank you very much. And I stopped being a consultant and went to work for Jeff. In the early years, it was, it's unfortunate because I swear to God, I think my second show there, Jeff lost his investor. And Jeff thought it was over. It was over. There was no money. There was no investor. We were like 2 shows in. He thought it was over. He was so apologetic to me because he knew I just left the WWE. And like, I didn't even give a shit about that. I was more concerned with him. You know, I mean, they spent a lot of time putting this together. Then the money was gone. And I'll never forget. I think my family spent the weekend with Jeff's family that weekend. And I'll never forget Jeff telling me, hey, Vince, apparently Dixie Carter, who was just the PR person, apparently Dixie Carter's parents, in Texas, they were in oil and they have a lot of money. And Dixie told me that maybe I should have a conversation with them. He just found out. And that's when, sure enough, he meets with the Carters and they wind up investing in the company. Things start turning now a little sour because it's a very tough situation because this was Jeff's baby. He developed this. He came up with this with his father, Jerry. Okay. But now all of a sudden he's got a boss because Dixie and her family are the money. And that just led to a very difficult situation for me because I was constantly being middled by Dixie. And it was really hard because he's my friend. He's at that point, he's more than a friend. He's a brother and she's the boss. And I was always being middled and it was very, very, very difficult. Then obviously the Kurt and Karen thing went down. Jeff left. And then when Hogan and Bischoff come in, I mean, at that point for me, it's game over. It's just a matter of when.
And going back to the World Wrestling Federation, what was it like working during your time there with Luna Vachon?
Oh, Luna was a sweetheart, man. A sweetheart. I swear, man, the fondest memory of Luna was, I remember, man, we were at a building and like off in the distance, I see Luna and Sonny yapping at each other. Okay. Nobody else is around but me. And I'm saying to myself, she will kill this girl. She will kill this girl. So I have to go over there now because there's nobody else in sight. And I got to stand between them, right? And I swear to God, while I'm standing between them, Sonny is still popping off to Luna. And like, I'm saying to myself, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, she'll kill you. Like, she would kill me. and Luna, listen, man, Luna was medicated. Luna had some issues. So she's not the person you want to mess with. And sure enough, Sonny's popping off behind me. Luna goes right through me to take down Sonny. I mean, literally knocked me on my ass. I was twice her size. I don't think I've ever been hit so hard in my life. But my God, when you talk about old school and the respect of the business and the love of the business, man, she's right up there. You know, like I said, she had issues and you always had to be aware of that. And thank God, David Heath was there, and he was able to, control a lot of things. Thank God for that. But as a person, a sweetheart of a lady, man.
And how did that get broken up eventually once she got to Sonny?
Oh, well, finally she was on top of Sonny and agents and everybody saw it and gave her an off like you see on TV. Right. But the fact, I still to this day, the fact that In Sonny's mind, she's popping off to Luna Vachon like you're an idiot. Like you are an absolute. I couldn't believe it. And then, like I said, when I stepped in and she kept it up, I was like, whatever happens at this point happens, man. Now you're just asking for it. And she got it.
Yeah. Always a fan of Luna Vachon. And the other day I was actually watching an episode of Raw from the Attitude Era with my son, and it was Gilbert's debut, and he lost to Luna Vachon. And I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah.
So let's talk about Vince McMahon. He was revealed as the higher power on television. Were you there during that? I can't. Have you?
Oh
left?
yeah. Oh
okay.
Yeah.
So you were there obviously for that. What leading into that? Was it always supposed to be Vince?
No, it was not supposed to be Vince.
Okay. What were some of the other ideas?
There was only one idea.
Okay.
And it was my idea. And at the time, Christopher Daniels was way over on the independent scene. The Dark Angel. He was way, way over. Everybody was talking about Christopher Daniels. So my idea was for Christopher Daniels to be the higher power. Keep in mind at that point on the big stage, nobody knew who Chris Daniels was. He'd never been anywhere, right? So Vince agrees, sight unseen, because I hype Chris Daniels to him. Then it's the day of, and Vince sees Chris Daniels and asks me who that is. And I'm like, that's Chris Daniels, the higher power. And he gave me this look like, are you effing kidding me? Just looking at Chris. He was like, Vince, no. And that's when we really had to call an audible, and it was Vince. Now, I just want to straighten something out, bro. I hear this all the time. It should have been Jake. No shit, bro. What do you think? We don't know Jake Roberts is tailor fit for that role? We're really that stupid? Bro, the reality of the situation is that was a time when Jake was in a really dark place. I mean, I remember, bro, when Vince brought Jake Roberts in like as an agent. Okay. I literally can remember seeing with my own eyes firsthand freaking Jake Roberts sprawled out on couches in hotel lobbies. I mean, out of it. I saw that out of it. And that's why he was released from his role when Vince wanted him to become part of creative. So when it came to this higher power thing, Jake was still in that space. So that was not going to happen, man. It just wasn't. And that's when, we came up, we made the audible and we came up with the Vince McMahon idea.
What was it like having Jesse Ventura back in the WWF? SummerSlam 1999 and that process?
Bro, my greatest memory of that is anybody that knows Vince knows he hates cigarette smoke. He hates people smoking. He always used to be on Pat just because Pat used to have cigarette breath. Okay? So you wouldn't dare smoke around Vince McMahon or smell like smoke, nothing.
Yeah.
So Vince brings in Jesse, who's the governor of Minnesota at that time, right? Bro, he knows all this. I mean, he worked with Vince for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Bro, that day, every time he was around Vince, he'd light up the biggest, fattest cigar. And cigar now, not cigarette, cigar smoke. And he would be standing there with Vince, bro, just blowing that cigar smoke in Vince's direction. And bro, the look on Vince's face, knowing he couldn't say a damn thing now. This is now the governor of Minnesota, who we need. We now need him. And the look of disgust on Vince's face and Jesse Ventura eating it up, freaking priceless. But again, man, we always go back to character.
Yeah.
Who was better than Jesse Ventura, man?
Right. And was he easy to work with?
Oh, yeah, very easy. I had no problems with him whatsoever. Very, very easy.
So there was a moment in time where Eric Bischoff challenged Vince McMahon. I think it might have been on a pay-per-view or something. And he said, bring it. Come on, meet me here. We'll have a match. What was Vince's reaction to that? Did he even bother?
Vince's reaction, God honest truth, because I was there in his house with him.
Oh.
If Stephanie McMahon was not graduating that day, Vince was going to fight him. I swear to you 1,000%. And anybody that knows Vince will believe me, because you don't challenge Vince. You don't challenge Vince. And I swear to you, if that was not the day of Stephanie's graduation, Vince McMahon would have showed up there just to see what Eric Bischoff would have done. God honest truth, bro. God honest truth.
So WCW, Judy Bagwell. Let's talk about Judy Bagwell. Judy Bagwell, on a pole match, the forklift. How did that come about where Buff's mom, real life mom, actually gets involved in the storylines? And why were some of the storylines for her just so bizarre? I love it.
It's real simple, because she was a freaking character. Yeah. Bro, listen, if you're around the wrestling business and you're a character, Ralphus, you're going to make your way on the show. You're going to make your way on the show. Judy Bagwell was a character. That relationship with her and Buff was freaking real. To me, two things. It's entertaining as hell, number one. And number two, it's different. I mean, come on, guys. There's nobody watching this show that can sit here and tell me the WWE isn't the same old every single week. Come on, guys. It's the same. I stopped watching the shows. It's the same thing. I'm not going to miss anything. I'm always looking for something that's different, man. Always, just to mix it up and not to have everything so mundane and so predictable. And like I said, she was a great character.
Let's talk about the late Nelson Frazier, obviously very popular with Men on a Mission as Mabel. He would leave the World Wrestling Federation, come back in 1999 at the Royal Rumble. I guess just known as Mabel. He wasn't Viscera yet. Would go on to become Viscera. What was it like working with Nelson over the years?
Yeah, he was again, bro. He was a soft-spoken giant. Never had an issue with him. The problem was he hurt a lot of people, and that's not gonna fly, man. When you start hurting people and it starts getting back to the boss, it's gonna kill you. And he wound up hurting a lot of people. But as a person, man, a sweetheart of a guy, a freak, absolutely looked like a freak, but that's eventually what happened, man. He just wound up hurting a lot of people.
So we'd see a lot of Attitude Era style promos that were shot in the WWF studios with Jim Cornette, with Vince McMahon, and each week you'd kind of see them just kind of going off basically on today's wrestling and that sort of thing. How did that come about and kind of implementing that realism into wrestling at that?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, that was me. Because I'm sitting there next to Jim Cornette. I know how he feels about everything that's going on. Okay. And who's more entertaining than Jim Cornette? Bro, go out there on TV and say how you feel. That's a great ratings get. I had no problem with that whatsoever. Bro, like I said, man, to this day, when you're the head writer of the show, your job is to get people to watch the show.
Right.
Period. By any means necessary. I'm doing an angle right now on JCW where I've got a female talent accusing me of sexual harassment. They're not going to do that in the freaking mainstream world. I want something different. My job is to get people to watch this show. So if Jim Cornette wants to go out there and cut promos on everybody, bro, that's great. That people will watch that. People will like that. Go out and do it. Bro, I got to tell you, I never let my personal feelings to anybody get in the way of my writing. I could have hated you. I could have not liked you. You could have hated me. I could give a shit. If you're going to add to the show and it's going to get us more eyeballs, I'm writing you into the show. Right. I still do that to this day. And it is clear to me watching the WWE, bro, there are favorites and there are people that are on the shit list. You could see it. Yeah. Not with me. With me, if you were going to get us more eyeballs, you were going to be on the show. I could care less who you are.
Let's talk about the Legion of Doom. Hawk and Animal, obviously one of the greatest tag teams ever in the history of pro wrestling, the Road Warriors and the NWA, of course. So early 90s, they're huge as can be in the WWF. They'd leave the company and return in, I believe, 1997. So obviously they were still Legion of Doom there, but they would return again at WrestleMania 14 as LOD 2000. How did that new style, that new gimmick come about for them? What was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, bro, I got to tell you, the hardest thing for a writer is when you step into a situation and you're now writing for somebody that's done everything. You know what I'm saying? It's so hard. Like when all of a sudden, I'm working with Ric Flair in WCW. Like, what hasn't Ric Flair done? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's always very challenging. And it was the same thing with LOD. When they come in, what do you do with them at that point in their career? Because they're never going to achieve where they were at their peak. And bro, that was the same problem I had with Goldberg. How do you top that streak? The only way you top the streak is, okay, we need to turn you heel. And if you don't want to turn heel, how are you going to ever top that streak? So that's always a problem, bro, when you've got these iconic characters that have reached the absolute pinnacle, and it's very hard to book for them without bringing them down. And you don't want to do that to them. You absolutely don't. But, a Hulk Hogan, like what else is a Hulk going to accomplish? Yeah. So it's just very, very difficult when you got a talent to, when you get a talent at legendary status. It's just very, very hard.
Were they welcoming to that new look?
Yeah. They just want to be a part of things, bro. They never, neither one of those guys ever. I never had a negative experience with neither one of those guys.
And it was a unique fit, but kind of a cool fit with Sunny. What led you to that?
Just giving her more TV time. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Because she was a draw, and the audience obviously loved her. So we just wanted to get her out there, every time that we possibly could.
Another bit of realism in that time period before the Cornette and the Vince videos was the Ross Report. And it was, a segment on the Action Zone, I believe, with Jim Ross. And he would, kind of give some behind the scenes, information, which at that time was unheard of. So I always tuned in specifically to hear the Ross Report. Any specific memories of that time period?
Yeah, no, that goes back to the hotline, man. The Mean Gene hotline, and that stuff was always cool. Man, I remember, in New York, every Friday, I think it was Friday, there would be an article called The Slammer that would give you like little tidbits. I remember, and like that was a huge deal because back then, like anything you could get like that, to a casual fan's not going to know about a Dave Meltzer. So if you could open up the New York Post, was it the Post or the Daily News? I don't remember. It might have been the Daily News, and just get information like that. That was really a big deal. So the Mean Gene hotline, Jim Ross, that was huge.
So hypothetical, you're not a drinker, obviously, but you're in a bar. Things are about to go down. Who are the 4 superstars, any era, that you're bringing to the dance with you?
Oh, God, the Haku, definitely. You're going to know these names. Haku. I'll tell you who it would be for me. Haku, Steve Blackman, Bob Holly, and Ken Shamrock.
There you go.
Those 4 guys. What about you?
That's a good combo. My gosh, Haku has to be there. I would probably say Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to mess with Andre?
Well, that's why I don't think there would be a fight. If Andre's there, it's not going to go down. So,
Yeah,
but go ahead. Yeah.
exactly. Probably Dan Severn
Yeah.
and maybe Bart Gunn with that jab.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yeah.
funny story that I heard before about Andre was some guys were picking on Haku in a bar, evidently years ago, and they didn't realize that he was there with Andre the Giant. So Andre's in the bathroom. Haku's being picked on at the bar. They're messing with him. I think it was three guys. This was being witnessed by somebody in the corner of the bar, Honky or Brutus. Somebody else was there. And so it starts almost getting to the physical point. Out walks Andre the Giant from the bathroom and just cleans house. And it's
Oh
just,
my God. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being those three guys?
yeah, it's unbelievable.
That's great, man.
Any memories of Terry Gordy as the executioner,
Yeah,
1996?
not really, bro, because again, that was kind of really before my creative, so not really. Man, I don't even remember having a conversation. I know exactly what you're talking about, but not really too many memories there.
And you mentioned Richie Posner in the previous episodes, how, basically anything you put on paper, he could bring to life with ease. And, money wise, it wasn't an issue. So,
Yep.
Let's talk about the Inferno match. How did that look? What was that thought process like and how it actually was brought to
Yeah,
life?
again, being a writer, you could pitch everything because you know they're going to do it. You just know it's going to work. And I remember them walking through that during the day. I remember sitting there watching it, and every time they hit the ropes, that fire went up, and it's like you just knew, man. Like that's the privilege you have of working with the best company in the business, especially as a writer. You just know, man, whatever you write, no matter how much it costs, no matter what it takes, you know it's going to come off like $1 million. I never had that experience ever again when I left the WWE, and it affected my writing because there were things I had in my head that I wanted to do, and I was just like, there's no way. I never had that with Richie and the WWE. I never had something in my head where I said, I can't write that because they'll never be able to pull that off ever. But down the road, absolutely 1000%, I wrote things that I knew could not happen.
Yeah. There was such a cool concept in 1995, both for WCW and and WWF. But this was obviously before your writing time. You were still at the magazine. Slamboree, WCW Battle Bowl. It's called the Lethal Lottery. And it was a tournament basically, but you would see heels and faces kind of being paired up together, which was unheard of. WWF would do that as well in the 1995 Survivor Series, with the main event being the wild card match. And you'd see the heels and faces together. And it was such a unique but very cool concept at the time. But it would never happen again. Do you know anything about that time
I
period?
love that. I love stuff like that. Absolutely love stuff like that. If you ask me, man, that's the only good thing about tournaments. The only good thing about tournaments is you got a baby face against another baby face. I love that stuff. But again, man, that's one of the rules of wrestling, where it's got to be babyface heel, or I mean, they can't get out of their own way. I love stuff like that, man. Love it.
And one of the first times you'd see realism or more of an edge to the In Your Houses, or that era in general for WWF, was In Your House, Good Friends, Better Enemies, with Shawn Michaels against Big Daddy Cool, Diesel. And of course you'd see Mad Dog Vachon's leg pulled out,
Yeah,
right in the front
yeah,
row there. You'd see
yeah.
Shawn Michaels get power bombed through the commentating table, which back then that was a huge
Oh,
deal. People
oh,
weren't going through
huge.
tables.
Oh,
You
no,
know,
yeah, yeah,
what are
yeah.
your memories of that time period and that particular show?
Yeah, that was kind of the in between, the really bad product and getting to the Attitude Era. Like there were those couple of years where we were trying to get there but weren't there yet. Bro, that's why I always give Shawn Michaels all the credit in the world, because he was carrying the company on his back for a while when a lot of things about the company sucked. A lot of things sucked, but they put the belt on Sean, and he was doing everything he possibly could to, do his part. And I always give him credit for that, because he was not the champion during the best times of business.
And another popular in your house at that time was the International Incident. Obviously, Shawn Michaels, Ahmed Johnson, and Psycho Sid would team up against Vader, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog, Camp Cornette. Originally, it was supposed to be the Ultimate Warrior. He had even done promos with them. He did a run-in for them. Warrior would disappear. Do you know why he left the company at that time? And what
I'm sure it was money.
Yeah.
I don't know what else it could be other than money. I don't know.
And in closing, your relationship with Ed Ferrara, how did that start in the WWF? And do you guys still talk to this?
Listen, I'm just going to say this. If it were anybody else, Ed Ferrara would have never, ever worked in the wrestling business, ever. And I'll tell you why. Because it was just Vince and I. That's it. You look at Unreal, that room was me and Vince. And what was happening was the Attitude Era was starting to take off. And Vince basically said to me, I can't be involved in this writing anymore. I don't have time, because now everybody wanted to be in business with the WWE, and Vince had to be involved more with the day-to-day business. So Vince said, we got to find you somebody to write with, right? And USA Network, Bonnie Hammer had worked with Ed on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Weird Science, and said to Vince, I know this writer. He also is an indie wrestler. I think he would be great. So we had Ed Ferrara come into a pay-per-view on just as a trial. And Ed came in and worked with me. And you got to understand, I was never a trained television writer. I was a wrestling fan. I knew about television. I was learning, but Ed was a full-blown television writer. Right. So Ed came in that day and started working with me, and I started seeing how much he could teach me and all the things he knew about writing for television that I did not know. He was from Jersey. He was Italian. I was from Long Island. I was Italian. And I knew this guy can help me make the product better. Yeah. Now, if that's anybody else and they see somebody that talented, immediately the alarm goes off. Oh my God, I got to keep them away from this because they can take my spot. That's how wrestling is. When they would have seen how good Ed is, they would have said, no way in hell, I got to tell Vince something. But I don't think that way, because I got confidence in myself. I'm not afraid. I know what I can do and what I can deliver. I'm not afraid Ed Ferrara or anybody else is going to replace me. So I knew Ed could help the show without a shadow of a doubt. So Vince said, what'd you think? And I said, hire him. I said, hire him. Without a shadow of a doubt, hire him. And that's when it turned into me and Ed writing everything and literally just bringing it to Vince for approval. And, Ed went on to teach at Full Sail University, but just wanted to have nothing to do with the wrestling business anymore. And obviously I'm going to respect that. I'm never going to drag him back into it. Yeah. But yes, we still keep in touch after all these years.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Vince, thank you so much for joining us for part 4. It's been a pleasure as always. And thank you for being here.
Thank you, bro. And I really appreciate it. And I do enjoy our talks. Thank you, man.
Russo'sBrand.com. Check it out. And of course, JCW 7:30 Thursdays.
7.
Sorry.
Yes.
7 p.m. on Thursdays. So check that out. And we thank you so much. For Vince Russo, I'm Joseph Bruen. This has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave your comments. We'd love to hear from you, the fans. Thank you so much. See you next time.